allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we do have the mic working. Okay, welcome everyone here this evening to this Marshall City Council meeting. We do have a prepared agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda?
Mayor, the City Attorney's Office has an amendment to an ordinance we'd like to add at the end of the agenda.
Do you want that at the end of the agenda, or do you want that as part of the consent agenda?
The actual ordinance, we're going to have a few amendments to it, so let's put it at the end.
So we will add that as agenda item number 19A, and the information is in your memo that was on the desk here this evening, okay? Any other changes to that agenda?
No.
Not, we'll operate under that agenda. First item then would be to consider the approval of the minutes of the last regular council meeting that was held on February 20th. The council does have a copy of those minutes printed. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
I have one.
Dan?
Yeah, on the bottom of page 1-3, I believe my conversation on item number 4 was, except for parks, which must be green, Council Member Ritter indicated that a department head
Right.
indicated.
Okay, Jane will note that correction. Okay, any other corrections to note?
Second?
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 2 is an item from the Human Rights Commission related to the Martin Luther King Jr. poster contest. At this time, I want to call on, we have a couple of members of the Human Rights Commission here tonight, but I want to call on Linda Bond to introduce the members as well as talk about this, and then we'll make some presentations.
I'm Linda Bond, Secretary for the Human Rights Commission. And
I'm Andrea Swenson. I'm a committee member.
John Linda, committee member.
And we held a Martin Luther King Day poster contest, and we have our poster contest winners here today. The poster contest showed children and people interacting positively together, people of different races and cultures who work together, play together, and solve problems. The posters were judged on clarity of the message, quality of the art, and overall attractiveness. If you'd like to come help us present. We have certificates here for the winners.
From the first grade, we recognize Annabelle Lacey. There'll be others that will come up here and join me. From third grade, Mara Malso.
Bill Houston. No, that's Bill Houston.
And Mara.
There's your current right.
Okay. From fifth grade, and Linda, you can help me here, there was a tie, right?
Yes,
So-
we had a tie from 5th grade.
So one of the people from fifth grade is Kathy Tischke.
There you go.
And the other fifth grader that is being recognized by the Human Rights Commission is Megan Cole.
I think that's who that is. I think that's Bill Houston.
And then there's two sixth graders that are being recognized. First is Macy Malachi.
You guys have to leave on Thursday.
And the other sixth grader,
Tough coming home.
the other
Saturday.
sixth grader is Kim Schultz.
One more.
There you go.
Charlie, get in there.
Okay, before you leave, Bill, invite everybody to join me in congratulating. And I also would want to publicly thank the Human Rights Commission for the leadership that they've given in this educational effort. So, very good. Thank you. Okay, we're on agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is a resolution, considering a resolution that would approve the proposed transfer of control of Prairie Wave Technologies, Inc. to Knology Incorporated, representing the cities in this transfer is Brian Grogan, representing Moss and Barnett. But to introduce this topic, Mike, do you want to make any comments first?
Thank you, Mayor. We have with us, is it Bill?
Yes.
Bill Houston, right? Houston from Prairie Wave Telecommunications out of Sioux Falls, representing the cable company. Last meeting, the council engaged the services of Brian Grogan of Moss and Barnett to walk us through the proposed transfer of control of the cable television franchise. Brian has assisted the city many times in the past as we've dealt with these transfer issues. Over the last 13 years, I think it's only too many times to count anymore how many times we've done this. But we've asked Brian to come in and provide the council with the overview of the transaction. His report assesses the legal, technical, and the financial qualifications of the new company that would assume the transfer of control. And I'll let Brian present that. Bill, if you have any comments that you want to add afterwards, we'd give you the same opportunity then. But Brian?
The issue tonight is a transfer. Excuse me, I just got a little lightheaded here for a second. Can you give me 1 second? I just want to run to the restroom quick here.
Bill, do you want to cover for just 1 second? Sure, I'll cover for you then. Okay. As Mike said, I'm Bill Houston. I am the general counsel for Prairie Wave. It's kind of funny, if I'm not mistaken, Michael and Brian and I are all Creighton graduates, and we're feeling pretty good right now. Creighton won the Missouri Valley and going to the big dance at the tournament. So, also, as Mike mentioned, there's been a number of times that we've done this. We've gone from DTG, where we originally got the franchise in 1999, to McLeod USA, to Prairie Wave, and now we have a new owner called Knology Inc. Knology is a company that is headquartered in West Point, Georgia. I've been to West Point, Georgia. It's on the Alabama-Georgia border. It's a very small town. So they come out of the same rural roots that Prairie Wave does. They come out of as Prairie Wave did, out of a cooperative telephone company in a rural area. We come out of rural South Dakota. They come out of Georgia. They have done the same thing we did with the 96 Telecommunications Act, and that is take those independent company, 100-year independent company roots and go into the competitive business in order to grow our business to stay to stay financially viable. When we went to McLeod, we were looking for money to build Marshall. McLeod gave us that. Unfortunately, their business plan didn't mesh with our business plan, which is the one that everybody else is doing now. That is the competitive overbuild and the triple play, voice, video, and internet. Everybody but Qwest, that is. Verizon, AT&T, all of them have gone to the business plan we started almost 10 years ago. So we continue to need money to grow, and that's McLeod didn't have the same vision we had. They went broke. We came out from under McLeod as Prairie Wave. We want to continue to grow. We have been working with this company, Knology, now for about 4 years. For example, we combine our purchasing power to get things like set-top boxes and those things, to get better deals by combining the volume discounts and so on. So this isn't a company that all of a sudden popped up out of the middle of nowhere. We've known this company for at least 4 years. We've worked with them on national issues. We've worked with them on advertising. We've worked with them on other things too. And so we think this is a very good thing for Prairie Wave. We're going to stay Prairie Wave. All we're doing is changing the top part. When we came out of McLeod as Prairie Wave, we came out as with venture capitalists as the financiers for this, and venture capitalists like to turn their investment about 5 years, and that's where we are, and that's what we've done. And so, and now Knology's now come in. They're going to be in here long term, and they have the same plans we've got, and we're looking to grow as a regional rural provider, and that's why we've sought the partnership with Knology. And with that, if you have any questions, I would.
Mayor, I might ask.
Wait till Brian has a chance.
I might ask before Brian takes over. Could you talk, Bill, just for a couple minutes about what you've seen in your years with the Marshall franchise, how it's changed from?
Well, Marshall's grows. Marshall's a town that's growing. That's kind of unique sometimes. I'm in the midst of doing annual training of the company employees where we talk about our vision and the vision of how we are going to grow these towns in economic development. And that's what we want to do. We want to provide the telecommunications infrastructure so that to live in Marshall, to live in Pipestone, to live in Laverne, to live in Worthington, I don't care where you want to live in this area where we have a footprint, you are served as well as any place in the world with broadband services. And we really don't talk about cable TV anymore. It's video. And we don't talk about internet really anymore. That's the broadband. And it's all together, it's a broadband. We just happen to use our cable platform to be able to provide all of those services. And we're looking right now for an accommodation in order to become a cellular carrier in this footprint. We're working with a company that's bought some spectrum in this area. We're going to have some people call it a quadruple play. We still call it a triple play because it's voice and it's broadband and it's just another flavor of that. So we just, this last summer, we got back into the overbuild business. We overbuilt Jasper, which is between just south of here, and in the little town of Einan, we put broadband in there. We turned that up right before Christmas. And we're going to do a couple more towns here in Minnesota this next summer, and we're going into Sioux Falls finally. But from the standpoint of Marshall, it's been kind of one of our crown jewels because it does grow. It has Schwann's and other things that make this a very vibrant community and a hub for this neck of the woods, and we're very happy to be here.
Very good. We'll probably come back with some questions, but
Okay.
let's turn it back to Brian. So.
I'm going to try to stand up, but it seems like when I stand up, I get a little dizzy here, so I don't know maybe it was the sandwich I ate on the drive down, but if I have to take a seat, I'll just do it from the chair. But
That's fine.
the transaction here is governed by 238-083, which is a Minnesota statute. It's also Section 9.5 of your franchise. We've got Knology, Inc. is essentially going to be the parent company. It's going to be held, ultimately it's going to hold Prairie Wave Telecommunications, Inc. It's your existing transferee, it's your existing franchisee under the system. So when we look at this, we look at legal, technical, financial qualifications to try to figure out whether Prairie Wave, as it's owned and controlled by Knology, will possess those requisite qualifications. The interesting thing here is Nology is buying out the Prairie Wave shareholders. So they're getting $225 million out of this transaction. Nology, in order to finance this, has to take on a fair amount of debt. And the financial qualifications section that we have at page 16 of the report, which I'm not going to go through in detail tonight, but I can answer questions, lays out how they're going to leverage this transaction. That's probably the biggest concern we have, is the amount of debt that the company has. They've acquired all of their systems through basically debt financing. So even though their cash flow has improved, they've improved from 10 to 13 to 23% cash flow over the last 3 years, which is a good positive sign. That's necessary to maintain the debt. And the debt they're taking on now is going to be nearly $600 million. So it is a fairly leveraged company, 8-to-1 debt to equity ratio. That's a concern, that's a red flag. The positive side is Prairie Wave management, personnel, technicians, customer service, they're all staying in place, owned and controlled by Nology. So the question becomes, what influence will Nology and that debt ultimately have on Prairie Wave and their operations? But when you review the legal, technical, financial, you come up clean on the legal. There is no concerns. We've checked with the Secretary of State, checked with the Delaware Secretary of State. We have no concerns about the ownership structure here. Technical qualifications, again, since Prairie Wave is staying in place and we haven't found them in violation, we don't have a concern that they're not technically competent to continue to operate the system. Nology's management staff is very good, no problem there. Financial is the big wild card here. As I described, we've got a high debt to equity ratio, we've got net accumulated loss now of $528 million, and these are all things coming straight out of their own Securities and Exchange report. So these are their numbers that we're producing. The transaction itself is described on page 10 of my report. It is in essence what's happening is Nology is going to merge into Prairie Wave Holdings, Inc., which is a kind of an intermediate subsidiary. Ultimately, Prairie Wave Telecommunications remains the franchisee. Nology is the ultimate parent. What we've done is put together a resolution for you to take action on or consideration tonight. It would approve the transaction based on certain conditions, one of which would be the reimbursement of fees that you incur to review the transaction. The other would be to have Nology sign off on an actual acceptance agreement saying they agree to be bound by the terms of your franchise. They will basically stand behind Prairie Wave Telecommunications so that you don't have an insulated subsidiary where there's no cash. All the money here is flowing into Nology. So we don't want to have Prairie Wave completely insulated and have no capital behind it. So, that is the main condition that we've imposed in the resolution itself. I think Mike Johnson has put together a slightly revised resolution clarifying a signature line and one other issue in the heading, and that's been distributed to the council members
No,
tonight.
they don't have that. We just did that for execution
Okay.
purposes. That all we did is, in the simple heading of the resolution, we added to the bottom that approving the proposed transfer of control of Prairie Wave Telecommunications Inc. to Nology on the first page, and then on the bottom of page 3, we just typed in the mayor's name and added the finance director, city clerk. So basically housekeeping items to that as far as execution.
So there's no substantive change to the resolution itself. The other conditions that are imposed in the resolution are rather straightforward: closing the transaction, notice, etc. So, again, it's a mixed bag of good news, bad news. Good news is Prairie Wave has done a very good job in the city. It's had a wonderful relationship, as I understand it, with the city. We've certainly not had any notice of any violations or problems. So the good news is that is they're staying, they're not leaving. Nology is not bringing in a whole new staff. The concern becomes the fact that they're financing this, and it's largely through a new credit facility that doesn't necessarily improve their financial situation, but the cash flow is on the increase. That's a positive sign. Yeah, I can't recommend, I can't provide you a clean slate to say this will ultimately be successful. No one can predict what the future will hold in the telecommunications market. We all may watch TV on our cell phones in 5 years. Landline systems may not be as viable, but at this point, we don't see any basis to deny the transfer based on legal, technical, financial. That's why the proposed resolution at this point recommends approval of the transaction as it's structured today.
Brian, what are what's the impact of all the other communities? Or in other words, another way to ask this question, is it necessary for every single community to pass a resolution similar to what we have? And I believe you're representing most of those communities.
I'm representing several of them. The way it works in Minnesota and in your franchises, we have a state statute that says you can't transfer control of a franchise without approval of the franchising authority. And your franchise has even more detailed language that says you can't just sell this to anybody without us first looking at it and reviewing it and making sure as elected officials that we think it's in the best interest of the residents and the community. So that's what this review is intended to do. And virtually every community in Minnesota has that type of provision. Most along the border as well have that provision, so they will all have to ultimately bless this. If for some reason some choose not to, it could potentially hold up the transaction. So far, I haven't heard anybody going down that road. Usually what happens in transfers is they get held up because you have a non-compliance issue. You know, the company failed to perform some act under the existing franchise, and before the city's going to approve it, they want to make sure that's all cleaned up before they let the next folks, come in and operate. That's not the case here, so there is no controversy necessarily to have to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions for either Mr. Grogan or the representative of Prairie Wave? Did you have anything else you wanted to add at this time?
I just want to add that, the 10K that was reviewed is the one from 2005, and they were improving in 2006. It's even gotten better. Their stock has gone, we're going back into a publicly traded situation. Their stock has gone from $3.50 to over $14 lately. And when they announced our purchase, we gave them about a $2.5, $3 bump. So we think it's the right move from us from a business perspective.
Any questions the council has? Mike, do you have anything further to add? No, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Brian. What are the wishes of the council? The recommendation from the legal staff is to approve the resolution that would allow the transfer to take place.
I'll move approval.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Mike to approve the resolution as proposed. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is one of 6 public hearings that we're going to have this evening. The first public hearing is agenda item number 4. This was a public hearing to consider rezoning 2661 Airport Road from an A agricultural district to an R11 family resident district. We will have the public hearing. Following the public hearing and public input, we will consider the ordinance that will allow that rezoning. Call on Glenn Olson, Director of Public Works, City Engineer, to conduct this public hearing.
On the right, back right. And the one guy up in the third row.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This rezoning is actually an application by the city after a recent annexation of a single-family residence. This is County Road number 7. This is West College Drive, just past the airport. So if you come down County Road 7, it's a single-family residence located at that location. The request for annexation came from the property owner, and that was recently approved, and now the city is requesting it to be zoned R1, one-family residence district. It seems to conform to, the proposed zoning seems to conform with the use of the area around it, and we would recommend the approval.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Is there any comments from any member of the audience as part of this public hearing? Not, Larry, this was considered by the Planning Commission?
That's correct.
And they recommended the approval of the zoning. Does the council have any input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. I will entertain a motion for the ordinance that would rezone this parcel.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 5 is a public hearing concerning the Wakama addition, and once again, following the public hearing, we will consider the approval of the preliminary plat. Once again, Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the hearing for the Wakama addition. To get you oriented, this is Trunk Highway 23. Just in this area is the Greenwood Nursery and Independent Lumber. This is Baseline Road, Susan Drive along this south side. So we've got, I believe it's 15 lots, I'm sorry, of commercially developed or commercially developable property. That's the intent of the property, with right-of-ways on the east side designated on their property, half of a right-of-way on the east side. This is a current right-of-way on Baseline Road, current right-of-way on the south side with a dedicated street right-of-way in this location. In the center, approximately the center of the addition, is a proposed stormwater pond that's interconnected with, the proposal is to be interconnected with the old Walmart pond, as well as we'll be talking about later on tonight, the Menards property storm sewer pond as well, stormwater pond. We have reviewed the plat and recommend approval subject to the items that we have shown on the engineer's report, and I'll say what those are. We're recommending that Nwakama Drive be replaced with Nwakama Street because it's just a direct east and west connection between two adjacent roadways. We're also recommending a full review of the stormwater system as it relates to all the properties involved in this development area. We have contracted with another consulting firm to provide a arm's length analysis of the individual stormwater presentations that we've been made, and the draft report came to me today indicating that each of the subdivisions seem to be compatible with not only each other, but the report that was done previously by Bolton and Menk about 10 years ago. So we're fairly comfortable with that. Any adjustments made to the plans, and there will be a couple of adjustments made to the storm water discharge size coming out of this addition, as well as the stormwater size coming into the addition from the adjacent property. But those things will be done prior to the development contract, prior to the final platting of the property. So with those comments made, we would make that recommendation for the approval of the plat.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Open up for any input from any of the audience as part of this public hearing. Larry, this was also considered by the Planning Commission?
That's correct. The Planning Commission went through this with Glenn back in February, and there it was passed to accept the plot 6-0.
Are there any questions or input as part of the public hearing from the council?
Well, I just got one question, but you're going to take the drainage from this, and it's going to go over in the pond by the old Walmart. The one over by old Walmart drains into
A 54-inch large storm sewer pipe that drains directly to the Independence Park pond.
And the Independent Park pond drain to?
Ultimately north all the way to the main pond north of the college, ultimately out the county ditch system that goes across 23 north of the college.
Yep.
North of Birch Street.
Go down Birch Street and then turn and go?
Yes.
I mean, Bruce Street and then goes down the back of?
The ditch 62
That's
system.
correct. That's correct. And the limiting factor on the drainage will be this system itself and the outflow pipe of the, now the Runnings Pond. The city will have to make contact with the owners, developers of Runnings Pond to make sure that the system is compatible not only with their system, but most likely some discussions of the city taking over the maintenance of that pond itself, because then it would become more of a regional pond. The intent would be is to have all three of these ponds act as one, even though they're separated. That would be the intent. If in fact that we can't accomplish that with them, the other alternative is for a different size pipe to bypass their pond, but ultimately, because it's connected to that 54-inch that crosses the highway into Independence Park, it would backflow into their pond anyway, because it's all connected.
Where does the
As one's-
Walmart drain go to?
The Walmart one?
Yeah.
It goes to that same 54-inch, but it actually connects at Highway 59 on both Shopko and Walmart are connected on the Highway 59 side. And then their discharge down here along 59 comes up along Runnings, along the highway, and then crosses. So all of that drainage system is taken care of by the 54-inch crossing pipe of 23. And that's the exact same size as the outlet pipe to Independence Park Pond.
So is there controls that control how much water can flow out of those ponds?
By the size of pipe, yes.
Just by the size of the pipe?
Just by the size of pipe, and that's all included in the hydraulic modeling. That's what's been done with, well, we'll be into that again later, but there's a whole hydraulic model that includes all of the runoff areas from the drainage areas that there's a split of the drainage down in the area just between, it's actually on the Menards site where the drainage split is. And then there's an area of the farm field east of even Menards' proposed site, the 60 acres that they are purchasing. And all of that then is included in the analysis that if and when the entire area is developed commercially, there's available property to build stormwater detention ponds on, so that the net impact will not raise the existing pond, for instance, of Independence Park. It will just take longer to drain completely. So the quantity of water coming into the system is increasing, but the height of the ponding is not. So it just,
So it's not
it's
gonna
more
be-
water.
Okay, it's not going to be increased flooding when we have the real heavy rains.
Right.
Quite frequently, Independence floods during those times.
Right, and this design takes care of the 100-year event. Okay, the stormwater system itself on site is looked at for a 1-year, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 50-year, 100-year cycles usually, but the size of the ponding is based upon the 100-year design. So the water, when it gets to that, when it comes off of its drainage area, will be detained for the 100-year event within the confines of that pond. And then once it gets over that event, there's going to be flooding. You have to stop the design someplace. So these are designed for the 100-year detention.
Okay, any other, Mike?
Glenn, could you talk briefly about the transportation plan that you've laid out with the development on the east side relative to Baseline Road and its ultimate connection as it goes to the northeast?
We'll go back just a little bit here. We have a transportation plan included in our comprehensive plan, transportation analysis, which lays out a grid work of transportation systems within the city, and specifically down in this southeast quadrant was one of those areas that we had looked at. And they show a grid of connecting roadways. When the area then comes forward for development, we look at that comprehensive plan and we go, okay, where now are those roadways going to be physically located rather than just this grid work? And one of those, and you'll see it more plainly on a following one, it may have been good for me to bring that one up first tonight, but in the Menards plat, we have the connections with Trunk Highway 59. We have those connections at Boyer Drive, the last set of signalization that we put in, and that was, we had that discussion back at that time when those signals were put in at that time. They didn't quite meet the requirements necessary to install signals at that time, but we believed that in other locations that had the Super Walmart come in, there was most definitely going to be some progression of commercial development in the future. So MnDOT then allowed those signals to be put in. The next set of accesses to this area was down on Windstar Street. Now that Menards is coming in with their proposal, Windstar Street is the next major connection to this area. Now that's the connection for east-west. For north-south, Baseline Road has been kind of a backage road, if you want to call it that. Backage road, frontage road, at least along this part is a frontage road, but not designated or not intended to ever be used as a real thoroughfare or a major connector. And in our transportation plan, that is shown somewhere on the easterly side of Super Walmart. Certainly not constructed at the time they came in because their access and their development is to the west. But now that this is becoming developed, the next major north-south route will most likely be just on the east side of Super Walmart, just on the east side of, there's an outlot on the J.C. Boyer addition, just yet to the east of where Skew's Jewelry is putting up their facility, just east of there. If you know where that transmission line is on the east side of this property, that would be the next most likely location for a north-south route. Now, where does that bring you? It brings you all the way from Windstar. That's essentially going to be a crossing of 59 all the way over to Saratoga Street into this area that would come up next to Menards, next to Super Walmart, up through here on the east side then of Newakama Addition, and the connection made to the Trunk Highway 23 just north of Independent Lumber. Now, there is an existing roadway and utility easement this whole way. We will have to be discussing with the various developers how in fact to make that connection and make it in the next short period of time. This connection would allow the connection with Trunk Highway 23 at the existing location. And in our discussions with MnDOT, there has been discussions that ultimately we conform with the restricted connections. Sorry, how should I call that? It's not restricted. It's the access plan that MnDOT has provided along Trunk Highway 23. Ultimately, with full development along this area, most likely that entrance would be closed and relocated to Lion Street. Lion Street is intended to be our next major crossover connection on both sides of Trunk Highway 23. That then would necessitate some sort of access from this location all the way up to Lion Street. So maybe more of an answer than you really needed, but there is a long-term plan. And that long-term plan develops as development comes. It's not all put in at once. But the plan is for the development like I just described. And I would propose that this development of Clarice Avenue would and should most likely occur with these developments that we currently are being proposed, both with the Menards plan and with the Newakama plan. I would expect that this connection should be made in the next couple of years. It is really the only through route coming through this area then, and that will then make available the development of adjacent properties on both sides of that, of this road.
That north-south easement is outside the city limits, at least a portion of it.
Half of it is. but it is already dedicated as a utility and roadway easement, even though it's outside the city limits. From Susan north. And it goes around the back and does connect at that location.
And the reason we have that for those council members that weren't on is that was where the sanitary sewer trunk line was done back in 1993, 94.
The sewer trunk line actually comes right down this area. So it is available for development. You can push water, but sewer is a lot more difficult to connect to if you don't have the elevation to do that. You can build lift stations, but that whole area now is ready for development with putting water and roadways in.
Okay, any other questions? If not, is there a motion to close this public hearing? Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie to close the public hearing. Discussion? Not all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We'll now consider the approval of the preliminary plat. Are there any questions about the preliminary plat?
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 6 is the public hearing on the ALA addition, and following the public hearing, we will consider the preliminary plat approval. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This, again, I want to orient you. This is East College Drive on the south and North Bruce Street, running north and south. The two parcels were meets and bounds description parcels, number 1 and 2. And the city code requires that in the sale of a portion of one of the meets and bounds description properties, they need to be subdivided. So the two property owners got together. This property owner wanted to acquire 33 feet of the adjacent parcel to allow the proper development of his proposal of a commercial establishment on this parcel. So they brought forward this preliminary plat to plat these two lots and then transfer 33 feet of this parcel to this parcel as lot 1. And there was also a small area that was just kind of, we call it no man's land. It wasn't included in either parcel, and we cleared that up. The intent is to clear this piece up with this platting as well. I think I'll leave it at that and see if there's any questions. We would recommend approval of this preliminary plat.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Are there any comments or input from the audience as part of the public hearing? Larry, this was also considered by the Planning Commission?
That's correct, and once again, the planning commission went through this, and the vote there was 6-0.
And is there any questions or input from the council? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We will now consider the approval of the preliminary plat.
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 7 is a public hearing concerning the Stonebridge addition. Once again, Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is, we brought this concept forward to you at our last meeting when we introduced this, but we want to make sure that everyone gets to see this again at the hearing. And what Stonebridge is, it's an addition that is I call it a small portion of a very large concept plan. And the concept plan is something that's brought forward to us to make sure that individual plats that are brought forward conform to a couple different things. One, transportation corridors is ultimately important when we look at these, and that the streets involved with each phase of the development do have abilities to connect to public rights of ways and get access. And on this one specifically, the only connection in this initial phase will be Windstar Street. Windstar Street will have to work on with 4 adjacent property owners and the acquisition of a private residence at the location that allows Windstar to access Trunk Highway 59. In the meantime, if in fact that didn't get provided, there would be the ability to access adjacent subdivisions to the north. But in fact, this has been one of our major thoroughfares that council has acted on various projects through, for example, the Carr Estates area for connectivity all the way across here. So it's in our master plan, our comprehensive plan. It's now being developed from the north, from Taylor's and Shearholtz's. And so we believe now is the time for this connection to be made. So this plat has come forward. Planning Commission has reviewed it as well, recommended its approval subject to the items that are shown in the preliminary plat, and we will have development contracts put together prior to the final plat submission. I think I'll leave it at that. Any questions that you might have?
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. Any questions or input from the audience as part of the public hearing? Larry, once again, this was considered by the Planning Commission.
Once again, Glenn brought this up in front of the Planning Commission, and it was discussed, and that was passed by the Planning Commission 5-0.
Okay, we'll open up for any questions or discussion or input as part of the public hearing from the council.
Got a question for Glenn. You know, on the long street, probably on the west part of it there, the long straight drive all the way down, is there any accesses out of that to go to the next addition that would be behind it?
Yes, the intent is there is connections, and before the final plat, we wanted to have a discussion with the adjacent property owner. There is some discussion of development of a park system on the westerly side of this, and we wanted to discuss that with the owner to see where the connection might best fit for that connection. And right now it's down here at this southern end, but before the final plat comes forward, we will have that discussion and recommendation.
Is that one that goes down around the bottom, is that a road that's going to eventually probably connect to 59 also?
This one will. This one is intended to meander through and connect at Trunk Highway 59 at this location. So these internal streets, all of these, are intended to ultimately be developed to connect down here at another location.
And we'd have 2 connections going into the adjacent,
Going north?
no, going west. I mean,
Going west?
Yeah,
We'll
we got
have one at
Windstar.
this north end, and we will be working with the adjacent property owner to see, okay, where best to make this connection through here. Right now, it's shown right here, just off the south end of this development. There's one shown right here.
Okay.
Okay, Mike?
Glenn, the review by MnDOT and the connection point there,
That's in, they don't have what we would call controlled access that is as significant as the 23 connection. However, they do review these, and there would not be a closer connection between Windstar and this township road than currently exists. For instance, they wouldn't allow another one here. We wouldn't even propose another one there. These connections now, Windstar, Township Road, somewhere along here, and then the one down at the county road will probably be the connections that will ultimately be allowed. And we have someone here from MnDOT here, so if I'm speaking out of turn, just let us know. But there is, maybe John, you could, do you know what the minimum distance of connections is on 59 South?
The minimum
Yeah, the minimum distance.
for public road access? 59, I would guess probably a half mile or a mile spacing.
They wouldn't be closer than this, so we're okay with what this spacing is. Yeah.
But the other reason that that's a concern is relative to the curve coming out of town from the south.
And this access would certainly be revised at a 90-degree angle to wherever the connection is, whether it's in a part of the curve or just after the curve. What we had tried to do one time was make this so that it was not in the curve at all. And so in this development, we'll be reviewing that with MnDOT as far as how that connection be made. Originally, I think this connection was moved over a couple hundred feet, for instance, for that. But they're not part of this plat.
Okay, any other questions, part of the public hearing?
Well, I don't really have a question, but a comment we've discussed before, cul-de-sacs on council here. And, there is quite a bit of research out there talking about how more and more communities and cities, as suburbia becomes more and more populated, are moving away to either limiting or doing away with all cul-de-sacs together. Mostly because of the cost to the cities, but as well as traffic flow and the fact that it tempers, some of that. And so,
We're following that exact direction. You can see in this ultimate development a minimization of cul-de-sacs. And what I'm saying is a minimization, I'm saying that only in those areas where they're almost absolutely necessary to provide a reasonable development option for the owner. So if you come up and look at that, here's a small cul-de-sac coming off Windstar, here's one. Those are the only two in that entire 80-some lots. When you go down into this area, here's a small one. I don't see another cul-de-sac in the development. So you're right. We would like to minimize our cul-de-sac development. It's kind of a two-edged sword. They're probably the most valuable lots in the subdivision. If you go to many areas, there's no through street. They're worth a lot of money. For the city's point of view, they're difficult to maintain. I think some of you who might live on a cul-de-sac, probably after our last snowstorm, probably understand the difficulties that we have with maintenance of cul-de-sacs. If it was a 2-inch snowfall and we could put it to the center and pick it up, not too bad. But the last couple snows that we've had certainly show the difficulties that we have with that maintenance. But yet they're valuable properties. And so the taxable valuation too is more on those.
Okay. Other questions, other input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie to close the public hearing. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We'll now consider the preliminary plat. Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 8, concerning the Menard subdivision. This is public hearing that will be held, and then we will, following that, we will consider the approval of the preliminary plat. Once again, Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the Menard subdivision submission. And it's I'll get you oriented. This is Susan Drive on the north. Just north of this corner is the Newakama subdivision. This is Boyer Drive. That's the second set of traffic signals heading south on 59, where it comes in on the south side of Super Walmart. If you drove straight in there, this is where Super Walmart is. And you continued in, this is the Menard subdivision. It's about, I'm going to guess, about 900 feet wide. And it's about 60 acres, and it goes from the south city limit line up to the township gravel road. So that's where we're at. And the proposal that Menards has for the subdivision is they would like to configure their development on this lot 1 of block 1 of the subdivision. It's essentially the southern 20 acres of the subdivision. You can see the small lines on this map. Those are 1-foot contours. And in their development plan, this is kind of the high hill of the area, and a considerable amount of that hill will be excavated, and that material then placed in this area of the outlot in order for additional development to occur. The plat also shows the extension of Windstar Street going from an 80-foot right-of-way at this location, all within the city limits, to a narrower right-of-way, still able to have a fully developed street in this area, but in fact, when and if this adjacent property comes in, we would widen that right-of-way to 80 feet when that comes in. Even though it's a 20-acre site, they feel fairly squeezed by this area, and that's why you can see Boyer Drive has got a little bit of a deflection in that area as well, in order for them to develop the necessary lot that they need for their development. So after our review, I believe that this is adequate to provide a street with or without additional right-of-way, but when that time comes, I would certainly work with that developer to increase the right-of-way size all the way through here as a major east-west route. Boyer Drive, you can see, has been narrowed down from the 80-foot width that they have here to 66-foot wide right-of-way, I believe. I can't read it on there. But a narrower right-of-way centered on Boyer Drive. There again, certainly adequate right-of-way widths to provide the cross traffic that we need to provide. We will be working with the developer now to establish the development contract that will specifically identify the roadways that will be developed under their project, as well as cost participation in any of the streets that we deem necessary out there. The subdivision does allow for the continuation of the roadways through its development area, and I don't see it on this plat, but I believe there was a north-south dedication of right-of-way too on the east side of the property that we had discussed. That would be coming forward in the final plat submission.
Glenn, would you point out on the map the location of the trunk sewer line?
Yes. The trunk sewer line starts at this location on Boyer Drive. If you remember when Super Walmart built, they built right over the top of the old one, abandoned it, first abandoned it, then built over the top of it, and relocated that trunk sewer line to Boyer Drive to this location. Then it goes north all the way to here, and then there's a short jog and then goes north again. So the main trunk sewer line comes right through here. There would be extensions for that sewer and water connection to this development, as well as ultimately to the extent of the street system that's developed. Like I said, this is about 900 feet, and probably is a good location for the next roadway going north. That's essentially, if you want to take a look at the average, that's about 3 blocks. But of course, in the big box stores, if there would be another one that would develop along this side, we would probably, research whether or not another roadway is necessary. If it wasn't big box, 900 feet is a considerable length between city blocks. maybe just a little discussion also about the stormwater system. The intent is for this water, here's where this hill is, that's the break point of the drainage areas. So this goes to the Cottonwood system, southwest, and comes around, and all of this area drains to the northwest through the Independence Park area. Right now, there's a designated wetland with 2 drain tiles located within it. That's kind of an anomaly to me, coming from North Dakota, but it's a drain designated wetland, it's farm, with a couple of tile inlets in. So when Menards develops their storm sewer system, they have an area right here designated for their pond, which is, it's an interesting design because there's a 190-foot weir on the north side of that constructed pond that then overflows into the wetland, and then the 6-inch drain tile, one tile, takes care of the drainage for that wetland. So the only thing that we have in the review process for that design, it's a good design. The only thing that we have in review is whether or not that existing 6-inch tile is functionally adequate. Design-wise, it's adequate. Functionally, it's probably not, without inspecting the entire length of that. So we will be reviewing with the developer and the probably a more positive outflow of that system that would connect their pond with Wacoma's pond. And so that's one of the items that we have listed in the preliminary plat checklist and concern. We will know that shortly. I did get the draft report today. We'll provide that to Menards as well. I think it was a good review, and like I said, the analysis and the design that they provided to us was adequate. I think I'll just stop there. We have representatives from Menards here tonight. If they would have any other comments for you for timing or any of that, we would recommend approval based upon the comments that we have in our engineer's review.
Thank you, Glenn. At this time, is there any comments that you want to make on behalf of the development?
I guess at this point, I'll just comment in case there are any questions. I think we'll be talking a little bit more after this portion of what we got to deal with. So I can definitely answer general questions too, since this is the first time we've come before the city council here in Marshall. So I'll leave it to you folks if there's anything you'd like to know.
For the record, I need to have you introduce yourself too.
Oh, sorry. Scott Nuttleman on behalf of Menards.
Okay, thank you. Any questions at this time for Scott?
Mayor Glenn, maybe you could clarify that you had placed, just to make sure as we move on, we deal with this drainage issue. In the Nawakama edition, you had the comment on the drainage flow that it was to be reviewed prior to final plat approval, that would be reviewed with the Bolton and Mink study that you're doing. Is there a reason that you don't have that same clarifying comment in this one at this stage?
I would certainly want to make that same comment in that we are reviewing the total system, and prior to the final plat and the development contract, we'll all have to be on the same wavelength for the entire storm sewer design connection. So yes, we'll want to make sure that we have a storm water review complete, and any comments that we come up with will have to be addressed and taken care of prior to the final plat.
I just didn't want to miss in the approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the comments that you have, that we made sure that you don't have anything listed, that we should add something to that?
I think we should make that comment, subject to review and approval of the drainage system.
Okay. Any questions at this time for the developer? Not, thank you. Any input as far as part of the public hearing from any member of the audience here tonight? Additional questions from the council?
Close the hearing.
Motion by Charlie to close the public hearing.
Second.
Seconded by Dan. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We'll now consider the approval of the preliminary plat.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And then agenda item number 9, this is a public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider the rezoning of the Menard subdivision from A agricultural to the B3 General Business District. Once again, Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the area that we just talked about, and this is a 60-acre parcel intended to be zone B3 General Business District to allow the construction of business, commercial business in that area. My only comment to this one is that we would want to make it subject to the property transfer take place. Okay, the applicant is Menards, and they're not the owner at this time, as far as I know. So just make it subject to the property transfer taking place. We would, the city would approve, I think, or we would recommend the approval of the rezoning anyway, but the applicant either has to be the city or the owner. So that's why we make that qualification.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. As part of the public hearing, any comments from members of the audience? Questions from the council? I would just make one comment in that there's been a number of public hearings tonight, and they fit together, and that is by design, so that the various pieces that are necessary in development, from the transportation aspect, from the drainage aspect, from the ability to serve it with utilities, to going back to a previous meeting, to even bring that property into the city limits. It's necessary that that be done in a coordinated manner, and Glenn has demonstrated that, but also in a way that's very public, that if anyone has any objections to it or any questions about what is happening, that there's the opportunity. So that's really the purpose of why we went through the public hearings tonight, to be sure that everything is being done in a coordinated manner, because these developments certainly, we want them to be successful, we want them to be a productive part of the community, and in order to do that, they really have to be done right. So that's what the planning staff has put a lot of work on, coming to this point. Any other input as part of the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Mike. To close the public hearing, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And then the following action then would be to consider the adoption of the ordinance that would allow the rezoning from A agricultural to the B3 General Business District.
So move.
With Glenn's addition? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, so motion by Charlie, subject to the property transfer, seconded by Larry. Discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 10. This would be to consider the approval of the consent agenda. We actually have only one item on the consent agenda for approval this evening, and that is the bills and the project payments. And then in addition to that, we have the building permits that have been previously approved by city staff and are there for information purposes. So, any questions on the bills on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We'll move on to new business. This is agenda item number 11, to consider the Three requests pertaining to the Menards development. First will be the conditional use permit for the lumberyard use in a B3 general business district. Second would be the request for a variance adjustment permit to construct a business sign with an adjusted area in excess of the allowable area and construct a freestanding business sign with a height in excess of the height permitted by the code in a B3 general business district. And then third would be consider a variance adjustment permit for less off-street parking spaces than are required by city code. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. These, you can see there's a progression of what things have to be first, second, third. This is the next item in the development of the Pedro building site. And the first one that we have to deal with is the conditional use permit. Once the rezoning is complete, then they can come forward then with a conditional use because lumber yards are one of the conditional uses in a B3 neighborhood. So that's what this is doing. It's coming forward with the request for the lumber yard. And then because it's a conditional use, and it went to the planning commission as well, there are conditions that may be established for that specific use in this neighborhood. So those conditions are shown in the planning commission recommendation. I'll just read those. Permit is issued to Menard Inc. and is not transferable to any other person, firm, or corporation. Number 2, all open storage must be screened from view of adjacent properties. Number 3, the screening structures and sales activities must respect the required yard regulations of the zoning district. And that recommendation was passed 6-0 by the planning commission for recommendation. So you can see the layout. You can see that this is now just for the conditional use to have a lumber yard in a B3 neighborhood. And we would make the recommendation for approval subject to the completion of the land acquisition and rezoning that we just took care of. And
Okay, very good. Mr. Nettleman, do you have any comments on this item or any objections to the conditions that?
None unless there are questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from the council? If not, is there a motion? Oh, yes.
Just one
Charlie.
question, I guess. I don't understand number 3, the screening structures, sale activities must respect the required yard regulations for the zoning district. What's the yard regulations?
The yard regulations would be the setbacks from the property line. So for instance, we wouldn't want the screening structure to be at the property line. We would want that to respect then that setback. We also have parking setback regulations that 10 feet from the property line, I believe, is the distance that those must be. So we didn't want to give them any indication that those screening structures could be placed closer than the required yard setbacks in the area that they were developing. That's the only thing that they were doing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I would move the recommendation, subject to the 3 things and subject to land acquisition and rezoning.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Dan. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. Second item relates to variance adjustment permit to construct a sign. Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you take a look at Section 11B, and we'll talk about the sign one first, okay? Sign ones go first. You can see in the review that there are strikeouts. The initial proposal was the area, the items have been overstruck. And then either some are deleted or some are changed to a different size. So ultimately, the recommendation or the review coming to you is with the changes. So the request is for a total square footage of, let me go back just a second. The size of the sign that's being proposed then is adjusted according to the location on the property. So the further back on the property, the smaller the sign becomes in its effective area, its allowable area. And so even though the sign sizes are one size, the effective sign sizes are different. And ultimately, at the end, you get down to a number. And the number that is allowable was 165 square feet. The proposal was 299 square feet, the adjusted, for 134 square feet of excess of the allowable, and that's the adjusted size. And I know that Mr. Nudelman had done a review of this, had also taken a look at the height, and was going to come back after the Planning Commission meeting with possibly alternatives for the sign height. So maybe before we even get into other discussion, I'd like him to show you what some proposals are.
One question
Yes.
before Mr. Nettleman starts. The deletions of the product description, the slogan, all those things that have been crossed off of the request to reduce the effective size of the sign, those deletions were made after the Planning Commission.
That is correct.
So this is, okay.
Glenn, also maybe before he begins his presentation, could you talk on the original request that came in to give the council some perspective of the size? It's 41 feet in length by about 7 feet 4 inches. I think you had an illustration for the Planning Commission.
That was just the one sign. And that was then about the same size as the width of this council chambers and the height up to the brick. It's a fairly large sign. And we have had some variations to maximum allowable signs in the past. This one was kind of sent back to Scott to say, okay, what can you really do here? We do want to work with you, but it was over twice what our allowance was, and just the one sign was almost twice what the allowance was. So both for the sign square footages and elevations, we did want to bring this back to council with some changes. So, and Scott is proposing that.
Well, just start with kind of an overview, and Glenn probably covered this a little bit. When we first brought the original proposal to the Planning Commission, we did have a relatively lengthy discussion about what we were proposing and the logic behind the ordinance and the city's feelings about sign variances in general and all those types of things. And as a result, I went back to my superiors and kind of said, bottom line is we've got to make a real effort here to try to get down to what we can really live with as opposed to what we would really like. And so that's kind of reflected in the deletions. Also, Glenn and Dale in particular had sent me what Walmart had done. And that was also helpful as well because Walmart changed from their standard package to meet your ordinance here. And so that was helpful in making some revisions to try to get down to what we thought we really needed as opposed to what we would really like. In general, I guess I'll start by saying signage is a big deal with us. I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have made the application. We wouldn't be taking your time. We know it's valuable. These meetings last long enough. The city staff has enough to deal with. But one of the big things that I'm always told and given direction from by my superiors is, signage is a big deal. We want to be visible. I think in a community like Marshall, probably everybody in town's going to know where we are the second we start pushing dirt around. Even after tonight's meeting, there'll probably be something in the paper. So that's probably not as big a concern with the folks in town being able to find us. But one of the very desirable things about your community, and as is shown by all the things that are before you tonight, there's a lot good about Marshall. It's not just the folks that live here, it's the fact that everyone in this area comes to Marshall to do their shopping and to do a lot of the business that they need to do for their families, and that's one of the things that's drawing us here on top of all the folks that live here. We also think we're going to be serving a really broad area, and I think it's for those folks that were probably a little more concerned with our visibility. I won't go into a long description about our site selection process, but we kind of ended up behind Walmart just the way things played out. And because of that, I think the real concern here is the pylon sign being able to be seen over Walmart, being visible kind of on the second tier off of Highway 59. And the sign height, as Glenn mentioned, I was hoping to have our guys go out and take pictures at various heights to show what the absolute minimum was to just be above Walmart's roof as seen from the highway. And unfortunately, because of the lovely weather we've been having, that didn't get done. So if that's something you would really like to see, that will play strongly into your decision as far as the height goes. I would ask that we probably table this one matter. If you would like to see those pictures, I've told them to go ahead and take them anyway. But they weren't going to get done before the meeting tonight. So I apologize for that. It was definitely my intention to be able to show you some photographs. I guess the other side of the coin is I think the 45 feet that is in the revised proposal, and I do have a kind of a sign plan if you'd like to take a look at that. That's a number we'll live with one way or the other without the pictures if you feel comfortable considering that height. But like I said, if you want to see what that absolute minimum is, we'll probably have to wait until we can get the guys out over the snow into that field to take those pictures. So other than that, I'll leave it to your questions and further discussion if you want to know some more of our logic behind this request.
Okay, so what you're saying is regardless of the decision on the height, the request, the revised request for the square footage of the sign would be the same?
Yes, I think, the square footage of a pylon sign is somewhat dependent on the height. The higher the sign gets in the air, the smaller it appears, and it starts to look ridiculous if you put a very small sign on a very tall pole. Mm-hmm. So if we were going to do a 50-foot high pylon sign, and just as a side note, we have done many signs larger than that, and that's probably in the vicinity of average, 40 to 50 feet. Then you're probably looking at that 250, 300 square foot panel, as the counterpart to a pole that size. But if we are going to reduce the height, I think we're comfortable in doing that, at least to the 45 feet. And as I've told staff, our only, where we're really coming from here is visibility behind Walmart. And as long as we can be seen over the roof, that's our primary concern. And as long as the panel's large enough to be seen from the highway, we would be happy with a sign that can be seen over Walmart from Highway 59. So,
and if the decision was made to table this evening, would a delayed decision delay in any way your progression on the development, your time schedule?
I don't think so. If we're going to delay it, are we looking at 2 weeks from now?
Yes.
That's not going to make a big difference. We've got a lot of engineering and other things that are continually going on, and as Glenn mentioned, we've got a development agreement to work out, and there's lots of other things we'll keep working on. Whether this is tabled or not, it's not going to push the timeline any farther back. We've got plenty of other things on the checklist that still need to be taken care of.
Okay. So what's the feelings of the council? We have a couple choices here. One is to move forward with the request for the variance for the size variance. And then the second choice would be whether or not to table the height or the alternative to that would be to table both matters and take them up at the same time. Glenn, do you have a recommendation on that?
I would like to have seen the height, so if we would table anything, I'd like to see the height, and that really came forward too from the planning commission recommendation, that they bring that forward, so if anything, at least the height discussion.
But in your recommendation, we could move forward with the decision on the size variance.
Yes, I don't think the discussion there is going to change anything.
Feelings of the council?
Well, I'm thinking that both the size and height are kind of one and the same.
Okay.
And also, prior to our next meeting, planning and zoning will meet 1 week from Wednesday night. If you could have that done and brought forward to planning by that time, I think that would be very helpful.
And I think that's,
Which gives you about 10 days.
okay, yeah, and I had heard that they were going to take the pictures today, but I drove over to the site, and I didn't see any tracks out in the field there. I don't know if they decided it wasn't doable with all the snow on the ground or what the story was, but I should be able to prod them and get some pictures by that next Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays from now, essentially 9 days from now. Yep, I don't think that would be a problem.
So once again, you're fine with the tabling?
Yep, absolutely. Like I said, I apologize that we didn't get the pictures here, because that was something that we definitely discussed at length at the planning commission level was, the height. I brought forth some pictures that showed that 50 feet definitely does the job. Then the question becomes, well, what height, what's the minimum height that we do it? We don't want to give you a variance, just picked out of the air. We need to know what you really need. So.
I would entertain a motion to table 11B and C until the next regular council meeting.
B and C. C is a variance in the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just be-
B.
I make a motion to table the variance for the size and height of the sign until our next meeting, and also to bring that to planning and zoning prior to.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Mike. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. 11C then is considered the variance adjustment permit for less off-street parking than required by code. Glenn?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This one is a continuation and was brought to the Planning Commission really as they originally proposed to provide 533 off-street parking spaces in lieu of the 745 spaces required by city code. The Planning Commission did meet and discuss it and did recommend approval of the 533 spaces. Mr. Nullman is here to give his pitch for 525.
Yes.
Well, this is one I also need to apologize for. I kind of should have, we submitted a plan, and Glenn's got a copy up there on the screen, and it says 533 on there, and then it occurred to me, what if we, in working on engineering or something, we lose one, and I know the general practice with most cities is to actually put a floor number on there, and if, the variance said parking must be at least 533, and then we lose 1 or 2 or 3 due to one of those types of issues, then to have to come back and redo it would be kind of foolish. So I thought I would, give a little leeway in there in talking with Glenn, and I think I had said something about how, or I had, given a letter to Dale or Glenn, I can't remember, I think it was Dale actually, said of course if a change happens and we have more room, we'll provide more parking spots. I think the issue here, and as we discussed at the Planning Commission level, we're working with your staff and in cooperation with the city's plans for infrastructure in this area. We formed ourselves a little box here on our site, and there's just only so much room in between Boyer and Windstar, and the size of our building and the necessary size of our yard, it just leaves so much room for pavement. And At the moment, it looks like we're going to be able to provide about 533 parking spaces, and that's why we're requesting the variance. But to put your mind at ease a little bit, I did a little research, and this would be the second most spaces we provided any of our 215 or so stores operating right now. We don't have problems with underparking ourselves. We have a lot of motivation not to underpark ourselves. As a consumer, and I'm sure you've had the same experience, it's frustrating to go to a business that doesn't have enough parking spots, especially a large retailer where you expect to be able to find a spot and get in the door. And we never, we don't have the same Christmas rush that a Walmart or a Target would. In fact, our busiest days are usually around Labor Day or 4th of July, and even then, rarely will we have more than 300 cars in the parking lot at any given time. A lot of our stores have around 400 to 450, and my direction always when I start a project is to aim for that number. About 450 would be ideal. Here we're well in excess of that, and I don't think we'll have any problems providing sufficient parking. There's also the other side of the coin of all these parking lot areas is, it's not very pretty. You lose green space the more parking you have. You have to deal with more water the more parking you have. And so under the circumstances, I think the 525 minimum is definitely sufficient and will be beneficial not only to us to be able to fit on the site, but also to the city in being able to be able to deal with all the water and all the other issues that we need to take care of to make the site work.
One other item that we'd like to bring up too is that he does have other areas on the site that is available for some of his employee parking within the back area. That's not included in the designated parking spot. So in our discussion, staff-wise, we haven't seen a significant issue with the proposal that they've got.
And that's something that we've discussed at other times. If we did transfer the site to someone else 30 years from now, they're not going to need our outdoor storage area. They'd probably tear that fence down and you have space for another several hundred, if not more, parking spaces, if that were to eventually happen and our use was changed.
Okay. Questions that the council has?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I just think that the parking regulations that we have for these big box stores is just a little overdone. It works well if you're, got a smaller store that's coming in and you're requiring so much per square foot. We really need to change how we handle the square footage for these large box stores, because I think we're requiring much more than they're ever going to need.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve adjustment of the variance.
Second.
A motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan, and let me clarify, the motion is at 533 or 525?
525.
And that's what your second is? Okay, motion made and seconded, everybody understands the motion? For variance adjustment permit at 525 parking spaces. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes. This time I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess.
I was going to ask you something. Can't remember.
Okay, at this time I will reconvene the meeting. We are on agenda item number 12. This is the 2006 annual financial report from North Ambulance. With us tonight is Dan. I'll have you start out. Dan DeSmet is the manager, and you can also make the introductions too.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Pat Coyne, he is my supervisor from the Metro. Came out here to just kind of go over things with the council and myself here. We've had a really good year again this year. Everything has been moving very smoothly. As you guys probably see all the time, we're really busy, and especially with the snowstorm here, we really stay busy with transfers and stuff. Nothing real huge financial-wise. And did you guys have any questions about anything?
Why don't we just continue with yours and Mr. Klein's discussion, and then there may be some questions that may come forward.
Well, as you can probably see from the report that's in your packet, we did have a successful year. We did have a net margin of $212,095. It's considerably less than what we had targeted as our budget, but that's probably more of a reflection of our budget process being somewhat top-down driven from a corporate standpoint, and sometimes we get targets that are just simply not doable. And the 212,000 is up about $4,000 from the 2005, so we are going in the right direction. Our units of service were up about 2%, and that's a good thing because we are a fee-for-service type of an operation. The volume certainly is not guaranteed, and in some areas that we've seen actually decreases in volume. So that is a good thing. It helps to keep the things cash flowing, and so you stay away from subsidies and those types of things. I'd be happy to answer any questions about any particular line item. There is one issue that I should probably make you aware of. I think it's mostly, mostly good news. But the one area that we continue to see issues developing is in recruitment and retention. And we are seeing a drop in the number of paramedics who are applying to the schools. Schools that previously had long waiting lists no longer do. And so it's probably not an awful lot unlike the nursing shortage. At one point in time there were a lot, and now there are few. And we are struggling with that and developing strategies and things to try and get more people exposed and increase the awareness of and the availability of that as a career. And so we're trying to do our part there, but what it also is doing is creating some pressures on wages. We're seeing, we have our HR department every year as we look to see where we sit competitively, do studies, and we found over the past few years that we've had to increase salaries on average 6-7% per year in order to just maintain and be competitive out there. So who knows where that'll go long term, but it is just something that I think is worth knowing about.
And to piggyback on that, just briefly, over the last couple months, I've been working with the Southwest EMS Association. It's about a 12-county wide association. There's 8 of them in the state. And as part of that, we did receive a grant from the State of Minnesota Emergency Services Regulatory Board to put funding or grants out there for new paramedics that are interested in going to school. So we are actually putting out requests for folks that are interested in going to paramedic school to help subsidize some of that tuition cost. So we are trying to make progression with that. So those are some of the things that we are doing locally to help with that recruitment retention area. We also had a large form here. Buck came out, it's probably been about 4 or 5 months ago on the recruitment retention. I think Mr. Johnson, you were there and spoke with that. I think the outcome was statewide. Certainly that is a big issue for everyone, not just for us.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Are there questions?
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know, I don't understand it. Under other revenue, you have 18,000 in actual and 10,000 some odd dollars in budget. What's other revenue? Why the big difference?
Yeah, and I talked with Pat about that. Part of that is how coding is done on my part. Instead of knowing that some of the other revenue that comes in, other revenue would be like if we got grants for radio equipment. Instead of putting that back into the radio equipment fund, I put it back into other revenue. So that's why that raised that number this year. So it was mostly kind of, I guess I shouldn't say coding, but where the money.
Because it shows a very nice increase.
Yes.
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 Can you do that with the rest?
I would like to. I would like to.
Thank you.
In that other revenue, is that also where training and classes that would benefit other providers or other communities that have volunteer services in the region? Is that where that goes?
No. They're a separate cost center. All our training goes into a separate cost center. And actually, we subsidize that cost center because we simply could not, people could not probably afford or would not probably choose to attend those classes if we did it on a cost basis. So we, as part of our nonprofit mission, help to offset some of those things. But that other revenue is things like if we have a particular dedicated coverage for a fair or something along those lines, those dollars get dropped into there. And we try to keep it separate from the patient revenue so that we can say, okay, this is coming directly from the patients we transport, and this other revenue is coming from other places.
Some of the, another larger portion of that is from some of the billing that we do for the other services that we do intercepts with. We just charge a flat fee for that intercept, and so that money goes into other revenue.
Other questions? If not, thank you both. It's a necessary service and you perform it well, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 13, consider the authorization for the volunteer firefighter roster increase. With us tonight is Chief Mark Claith.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. According to our policy, the fire department's only allowed 45 members on right now. With the anticipated retirements in 2007 and 2008, I would like to put two more candidates on. We got authorization back in the first part of February for 3, I believe. And the training is close right now. And I foresee I'd like to keep that number at that 45. And I think now is the time while we're training those other 3 to get the other 2 in too and have them all on board at the same time.
So your long-term intention is stay at about 45?
We're maintaining about 31 people on a call, and that's with people's jobs and other scheduling conflicts. So I think, that is an adequate number. Of course, if we had something major, I'd have to call in for mutual aid to help us anyway, but on the average, we're running about 31 people to a call.
Any questions for Mark on this?
Mayor, I'd certainly recommend that as we take a look at the training and the anticipation that, and that's the reason it's before you, is that the council imposed limit has been at 45, and due to the opportunities for training and some retirements, that's why we're recommending go to 47.
Very good. I would entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie on the recommendation. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 14, Project Y01, the Downtown Alley and Storm Sewer Replacement Project. We have a change order, the final change order, acknowledgement of the final payment application. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see the final change order is fairly significant. Most of that change order was due to changes in the utility locations behind Main Street, both in 2 locations, both the south side and the north side. Also, there was a small amount of additional concrete removal and replacement that was necessary for matching in with the existing concrete. So there is some that was removed just because it was, shot and wasn't worth sawing and replacing it next to it. These are the final measurements. We would recommend the approval of the change order and the final payment, and the various utilities then will be charged for the extra work that was necessary due to their relocation.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Are there questions for Glenn? If not, I'd entertain a motion to allow the change order and acknowledge the final payment.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 15, consider the waiver request for the city's Small Cities Development Program Downtown Revitalization loans. Mike, do you have this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is the last commercial project in the downtown under the current Small Cities Program that WestCap has for consideration. As you can see in the materials that are being presented as part of this, the cost estimates for undertaking the major repairs that are proposed with this building are fairly significant. It was reviewed by the Marshall Design Committee, of which Councilmember Mike Reynolds is a liaison. And so in addition to the existing program, under the 1% loan and the 0% grant program, they're asking to access additionally program income to add to that or to supplement that to undertake the proposed project. As you can see, the total estimated cost of the project is a little over $83,000, of which the owner would be responsible for $30,194, with the balance coming from the 0% grant program and then the other part, the 1% loan program.
Okay, and Mike, do you have anything to add?
Well, nothing but just to reiterate what Mike said, and that is that this is a big project. The building needs a lot of repair, but what it has done so far is just really been nice in appearance, what they've done in the front so far and what they're continuing to do on working on that building. So obviously them and several of the other projects really show what the benefit was of this grant program. So like I say, I recommend approval of this waiver request.
And is that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Now discussion on the motion?
Mayor, one further clarification is that the balance that Tom has as of February 26th is a little over $31,500. However, we take in approximately $4,000 monthly, and so by the time we'd have to make any payout of that, we would have sufficient on hands to cover that request.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? I would echo what Mike had said in that this project has turned out extremely well and is really an asset for the downtown area, along with a number of the other projects that have been done with the participation of this loan program. Yes.
As this total project comes to completion, when they finish out the mixed-use rental and/or the single-family, we will be doing a recap of the investment and the activity that's occurred in the second Small Cities program, and then we will couple that with the first to talk about the total investment that's been made in the downtown area and the adjacent to the downtown over the two projects from the state of Minnesota.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. This time I'm going to make a change to the agenda order, recognizing I've been kind of looking at who's here for specific items, and we have three people, I believe, that are here for agenda item number 19. They're the remaining audience members, not including staff. So I want to move down, if it is okay with the council, to agenda item number 19. This agenda item number 19 is the proposal by Minnesota Department of Transportation to remove the traffic signals at East College Drive, Trunk Highway 19, and Whitney Street. With us tonight are a number of representatives, John Henslin. John, are you going to take the lead on this presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
The presentation will be handled by Jordan, but I'll just kind of do a quick introduction.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. John Henslin, traffic engineer for your area out of MnDOT. I thought the agenda that you had was really interesting in that you talked a lot of your development on Trunk Highway 59. You might have remembered me from 20 years ago when I was a very young engineer and I came in with the layout for that Trunk Highway 59 project. So it was kind of fun seeing what development is happening out there. And I know we worked with your planning commission for some of that development, so it was kind of neat to see it come to fruition. As you know, we are working on Trunk Highway 19 as far as scoping and preliminary design through most of Marshall. And as part of that, our traffic unit has been doing a lot of studies as far as level of service and capacity. One of the ones that were brought to our attention was Whitney and Trunk Highway 19. I'm fortunate enough to right now have Jordan Schwartz. Jordan is a graduate engineer. He is now working in my unit. And what we did is asked him to do an evaluation of Whitney and Trunk Highway 19. And what he'll do is give you an evaluation and a presentation of that evaluation and the results. After that, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to field them. And I think you know everybody else here is Tom being from the area. So Jordan, I think I'll let you take over.
Thank you for having us tonight here. As John said, my name is Jordan Schwartz. The intersection of East College Drive and Whitney Street is a signalized intersection, and with the proposed reconstruction of East College Drive, tentatively scheduled now for 2012, in combination with delay that is perceived to be unnecessary, it led to the execution of a traffic signal retention removal study. Currently, the existing intersection is controlled by a traffic signal that was installed in 1964. It was installed as a fully actuated signal. That intersection is signed as a school crossing, though the building in the northwestern quadrant of that intersection is no longer a public school. Currently, the building is owned by Grace Life Church. Marshall Area Christian School operates there, as well as Head Start Preschool. We conducted a 16-hour vehicle pedestrian count. Count every vehicle, and as well as which direction they are turning, and the same with pedestrians. Based on that count, 0 of 8 signal retention warrants were met, and 60% of signal warrant 1 8-hour vehicular traffic volume count was not met. And pedestrians, 4 pedestrians crossed during the entire 16-hour count. Now, those were all in the afternoon. We'd have to have 16 more pedestrians cross in that same hour in order to consider signal warrant 5, the school crossing warrant. I know the question is going to come up. When was the count taken? And in this case, it was January. Weather isn't typically all that great in January. However, temperatures on this day were in the upper 20s. Conditions were sunny. So it was weather that would not deter walking to or from school. And even in conditions, say the temperatures are 50 degrees higher, are we going to see 60 more kids in the same hour cross the intersection? And I would doubt that. What we are proposing is a 2-way stop control at the intersection, through condition for East College Drive, stop condition for Whitney. And I'll say right now that there was a crossing guard present during both the morning and afternoon at the intersection. And with this switch, we'd very much encourage the continued use of the crossing guard. We'd argue that the crossing guard is in fact the biggest safety feature out there, not the signal. The intersection control transition, in the month prior to changing the intersection control, we'd put a sign very similar to this out at the intersection to let the let the traveling public know that there will be a change coming at this intersection. Following that month would be a 90-day study period. Traffic signal heads would be covered so as not to be seen, and the 2-way stop control would be implemented. What we'd likely do, at least during that 90-day study period, is put an oversized stop sign out there, as well as plaque below that stop sign that says cross traffic does not stop, letting the people approaching on Whitney know that vehicles crossing on East College Drive will not be stopping. And after that 90-day study period, if no further study is necessary, the signal hardware would be removed. And we do have a couple of site obstructions that we would like to clear up. In the southeastern quadrant, it's a group of shrubs along a house that we'd either be looking to trim or completely remove. And in the northeastern quadrant, we have the signal cabinet, which would obviously come out with the removal of the signal. But we also, as John's pointed out, the trees there,
There's a series of
or the shrubs rather.
And then you got a signal cabinet.
And as well as the signal cabinet, you can see a couple trees there that may interfere with the sight of vehicles stopped on that northern leg of Whitney that we would be looking to clear up. The proposed annual benefits of this removal and implementation of 2-way stop We estimate we can reduce accidents by at least one out there. During the period of 2003, 2004, 2005, we had 10 total accidents at the intersection, average of 3 1/3 accidents per year. You're looking at it would likely reduce those accidents by at least one down, 2 or fewer. And just a property damage accident alone cost to the people of the state of Minnesota would be reduced in excess of $4,000. We estimate delay at the intersection would be reduced by a total of 15,000 hours, stops by 1.8 million. Fuel consumption reduced by 12,000 gallons, and fuel cost, depending on the price of fuel, would be reduced to $25,000, or in the case now where gas prices are inching up again, that'd probably be in excess of $25,000. And signal operating costs would be reduced an estimated $1,000 annually. That ends my presentation. Are there questions, comments?
Yes. He provided me tonight with the warrant summary. Thought maybe if you could just summarize those warrants that indicate what is looked at in the warrant summary.
As I stated before, there are 8 signal warrants that we typically look at for the installation of signals. In this case, however, we're considering the removal of a signal. Typically, signal warrants 2 through 7 are looked at just as they were for installation. However, signal warrant 1, we consider if 60% of that warrant is not met, we would look to remove the signal. In this case, 60% of that signal warrant 1, the 8-hour vehicular traffic volume, was not met. So really you're looking at more like 30-40% of the installation warrant. So traffic volume wise, this intersection does not even come close to meeting our installation warrants. Warrant 2, also a traffic volume warrant, 4-hour volume warrant. Didn't meet that either. Peak hour warrant is warrant 3. Did not meet that. Warrant 4, pedestrian volume warrant. That is, in order to consider that, we need 100 pedestrians per hour for 4 hours during the day, or in any 1 hour, I believe it is 190 pedestrians in any 1 hour. Well, at the intersection, we had a little over 60 pedestrians the entire day. School crossing, warrant 5, which I showed there a bit earlier. We need 20 school children to cross the intersection during any 1 hour to even consider that. Well, we had 4 the entire day. Coordinated signal system is warrant 6, did not meet that. Warrant 7, crash experience, did not meet that. And warrant 8, roadway network, was not met. Any further discussion on that, Glenn?
I just want you to say what you do consider.
One thing that was mentioned on the accidents, Jordan said there was 10, 8 of those were rear end type. These are type that are normally associated when you put signals in. First guy stops in time, the second guy doesn't, when you got that stop and go type of condition. So a lot of the accidents we're seeing out of there are probably related to the signal more than anything else.
I think there may be some questions about the, related to the study and ultimately the conclusion that you're drawing from the study to remove the signals. But before we even get into those types of questions, I have a question about the authority, and the decision-making. Does the city have any control at all on whether or not these stoplights are going to be removed or not?
John, I defer that question to you.
I think that is a MnDOT decision as far as the studies that I've done on it.
So it does not
We're
require...
glad to hear your input on it, though. Don't take us wrong there. But the authority would be ours. Normally, when we're putting signals in, we generally go through an agreement. That's generally for a cost participation type of thing. So you have a sign-off on that point, but I don't think there's any other sign-off that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it does not require the agreement or compliance of the city
It won't require any
council?
action on your part. as far as formal action.
Okay, let's open it up for any questions.
So you're not asking us if you can, you're telling us you're gonna.
Our letter basically said that our recommendation was to do that, and Glenn told us to come here and talk to you a little bit if you had any more questions on it. But that's the conclusions we met. There's standards for removing them, and I think Jordan did a pretty good job of explaining them. It is a lot less stringent than putting signals in. So signals you just don't take out right away unless there's, for some reason, you are very low on counts. And we didn't even come close on the 60. I think we're looking at about 20 to 30% of the volumes that we should be having to have a signal in there. So we're looking at a very low volume count out there. Maybe at one time when the school was very much operational, maybe there was a lot more traffic there, but we're not seeing.
Well, I think like anything, that changes, and I mean, I live a block over from it, and kids used to walk more. Today they drive or they get dropped off. There isn't that much.
I'd just like to say that on that particular signal, there's been numerous times that I've come to that signal because I go to the church that's right there. So there's been times I couldn't even get off a High Street because I had to wait for the intersection to change so that the cars could move, and there was nobody coming on Whitney either way.
That's why I'm late for work every
There you go. But, I mean, so, and coming from the other way, I've had cars backed up where I've sat in line almost to Super America corner, and you look up there and there's nobody turning, nobody moving. It just changes, and there's just, no reason for it to be changed. And I talked to our church administrator, and he sent the email out to the school that's there in the end of Head Start, and we got no feedback from them about, them having a great desire to have it there either. So I don't think there's been anybody yet that's spoken opposed to it. Most of the people who talked to me has been pleased to say that, now I won't have to stop when I don't have to anymore because there's nobody there. So I think it's a good deal to move it out.
But your recommendation would be to keep the guard crossing?
Definitely. I think that's a good procedure to have. People really respect that guard. They really do.
However, and we may want some input from our public safety department based on the volume of traffic there. The guard works in accordance with the signal that, he allows, once the light turns green, that's when he steps out. If there's no control there, I'm not sure that's going to be a safe situation for that guard to be stepping out into traffic on College Drive when there's no slowing of traffic.
Yeah, most of the guards that I've seen are generally mature adult, number one, and they're generally equipped with a stop flag. They wait for a gap and then go out in the gap. I don't know of many problems that we've had with that type of situation, to be honest.
Don't you already have that situation on College and 4th Street, right there by West Side? They have a crossing guard, and there's no traffic light on that. No, on the other corner.
On the other one, on
by
Highway 19 side.
Leisure Field.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Tom on that, so.
Tom Beamer, District Assistant District Engineer for MinDOT. That's right, there are no lights at that corner of 4th and 19th.
And all you have is a crossing guard, and they just step out when.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there could be a possibility you could move that street crossing or school crossing down to the lighted corners in Super America. It's, a block away or whatever.
Yeah, if they select that as a school route, that we could do. Right now, that is signed. We should have mentioned that. And we don't plan on removing any of the signage for that crossing. And if the schools want to move a crossing, they can let us know and we'll work with you on it.
I think you're going to find it interesting when you do your 90-day study and we get some warmer weather with the bike traffic, et cetera, going from that side up the whole Redeemer and back. I think you'll see some increased foot traffic and bike traffic. I don't think your car traffic will go up any.
That may be true, Larry. That's, I think, the nice thing about having a 90-day trial.
Yeah.
You haven't removed the facilities in case you need to reinstate them again, they're there. But we're basically got to go off on the counts that we did take. I think they're very valid counts.
I understand that, but I'm saying I think
granted,
that'll
summer
save
might bring
someone.
more people out.
But if at the end of the 90-day study, if the counts warranted to keep them, could that happen?
if you maybe taking a new count. I don't think we take a new count unless we see a real problem out there. Okay. Yeah, you gotta remember, school counts are low counts.
Yeah.
The regular pedestrian counts are something you'll see in the summer when school is closed. They're a very high count, and I know we won't come close to that. That's 100 per hour for 4 hours. And I don't know of any that I've got in our district thus far, so I doubt whether that one will make it.
During the test period, in addition to the, testing to see if there's any problems that come up, is there also the opportunity for additional public input? And where I'm going with this is, while this is on the agenda tonight, we don't have people from the neighborhood here tonight, likely because they may not be aware of this action, other than if they read the agenda that was published in the paper over the weekend. But this may come as a surprise to the neighborhoods, is what I'm getting at.
Funnel anything you hear to us. And I know Glenn has been good at that, and Mike gets back to us if they identify problems. So if you hear complaints, let us know. Just let us know, we'll see what we can do.
Other questions? Glenn?
I think a continuation, an update of the 23 traffic signalization, and maybe a comment or two on the sidewalk project that we have coming up.
Okay. Just real briefly, we've been asked to put the advanced warning flashers in on 23. We've had these requests before. We are now looking at installing 2 of them. One would be on the Lynn side of the junction of 23 and 59. The other one would be on the Cottonwood side, I want to call it, at the junction of 19 and 23. The one on the Lynn side, I don't think there's going to be any problem with. I have kind of hedged a little bit on the one on the Cottonwood side because we already have that school system set up there. I want to make darn certain we aren't interfering with any flashing beacons that we are going to set up for the school. So that's the only reservation I have on it. Of course, that wouldn't be something that would be done till this following spring or summer. So the other thing is we've been working real hard with the city. I know at least a couple of you from the city have worked with us on sidewalk along Trunk Highway 19 from O'Connell all the way out to the new high school. We've had numerous meetings. I think that's going ahead quite well, and I'd accept any comments from the 2 of you that sat on it, but I think that has been moving forward without any hitches. So the school has been working with us on that also. So we plan to have that in, if we can, in the construction year 07. So.
Okay. Other questions?
The flasher, the warning flashers that the light's going to change, you're not going to have one on the Lynn side of 19?
It would be, no, not on the Lynn side of 19. That's we figured by the time we got them slowed up there, we shouldn't really need it. The concern was that what we're hearing from is the truckers that are coming in off the high-speed ends, coming into those signals. So basically, we'd have one in advance from each side going into the signals.
Well, I live out in an area, and all night long, I can hear the trucks really use a lot of Jake brake and just really breaking down. So when they're coming up in that corner, around that corner, and then seeing the light change, it's a downhill grade besides. You know, there must be some difficulty for them out there, because I hear an awful lot of that braking going on that they wouldn't be using if it was just a normal slow down and stop. So.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
As long as we have representatives from MnDOT here, and we're welcome. A couple other topics. The activation of the road closure barricades and lights and the procedures. You want to make any review comments about how that worked? And
Didn't get those.
Thanks for bringing that up, Bob. Yes, I'm the guy that turned them on. Actually, that's they're called NERCO devices, non-interstate road closure operation systems. Anybody that's been in Marshall any length of time can understand, even 10 years ago, the winter we had back in 96, 97, and the times we closed the road, utilizing barricades, utilizing trucks parked crossways in the road, pushing up snow to block the highways to keep people in Marshall off the roads in the country that were blocked. ice-covered or whiteout situations. So we installed the gate systems a couple of years ago. This is our first opportunity. We think it went, from our perspective, it went fairly well, and one of the measures we felt is how many complaints did we get that we closed them too late, too soon, should have closed them at all, and basically we have very little feedback on whether or not we should have dropped the gates and activated the flashers. Basically, this last event started out with District 7, Mankato, who has jurisdiction of I-90 to the south. They said, we're going to close I-90 at noon, and then we're going to close the rest of our system from I-90 north to our district, District 8, at 1 o'clock. So we asked, could you hold off until 3? We said, from our perspective, we could hold. We'd like to see you hold off until 3 in District 7. They asked us to move it up to noon. We compromised and basically initiated our process at 2 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, we tried to get the notice out to the media to notify them that we were going to drop the gates. And from that point on, the gates went down. Situations got, we feel got worse as far as visibility, drifting, and the like. And realizing that it's important to keep the economy moving, we had our folks start at 5 a.m., basically doing the in-town stuff, but then getting out as quick as we could to 23 and 19, 23 north and 19 east to get those opened. So we had those open by about 8 a.m. and the rest of the system by noon. So hopefully it wasn't down too terribly long, but had great cooperation with the news media and the paper and the radio stations to get the message out. So appreciate your comments on it.
Any feedback?
I'm glad to see they work. I was always wondering.
I shouldn't tell you, but last winter we had car batteries sitting in the storage because they weren't wired yet, so we were going to haul car batteries out there and trip them, so.
Very good. And then one final question I have, and maybe you're not prepared to speak to that, but the construction project move up in the district as well as the state, do we, in the governor's recommendation, but if you're not prepared to talk about that, we can.
As far as the governor's proposal for bonding projects?
Right. I think the move-up projects were overpass at 23 and 71 in Wilmer.
That's correct. And I can talk a little bit about the program because I think, Bob, you had mentioned earlier that Dave Troyan was done and we talked about specifically, I think you're referring to the Painesville project, what we call on Highway 23. And that's a project that is right on the border between District 8 and District 4. And why are we funding it? And situations going back and forth on that, discussions. And basically, as we understand it, there could be some, if you want to call it a payback, from the bonding bill. That's one of the projects identified, along with another project on 19 in Redwood Falls that could be eligible for bonding. So if in fact that could take place, those dollars that are currently being set aside for that 59 or for the 23 Painesville could find another home, sure.
Okay, so my question is Highway 23 in the Marshall area. That's not a candidate for move up.
I think they are so close. Well, we can go through the list just a little bit. We have the 23 from Highway 19 north in 09. We have 19 east of 23 in 08. And we have Marshall down to Russell in 2016. So could the 2016 project, the 4-line south to Russell, move up? Possibly, yeah. Could there be other enhancements to that project, such as interchanges, underpasses, overpasses? Possibly, but there's some engineering things we need to address, and basically where we're at to date is that we're working with the county and the city as to the specifically County Road 7, is that we need to preserve that corner that for a future interchange, that right of way. So we'd like to work with the city and the county on development of that corner.
Thanks, Tom. Any other input or questions? If not, thank you, all three of you, for being here. Okay, we're going back up then and move back to agenda item number 16, consider authorization to advertise for a pickup for the street department. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see that this wasn't included with our previous ones because the specifications were not available for 3/4 tons at the time. We took the recommendations from our committee and included those in the specifications on this two-wheel drive 3/4 ton as well. So we would recommend authorization to advertise.
Any questions for Glenn?
Glenn, would it be possible to remove the gross vehicle weight requirement as a minimum? That 3/4 ton at the top kind of defines that.
I don't think it would.
Shouldn't be a problem. And then just have color preferred, like before.
Yes.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move approval with those changes.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 17, consider recommendations from the Joint Planning Commission and the Legislative Ordinance Committee, the discussion of the limits of the downtown district, as well as the introduction of the ordinance amending the city code for the private use of public streets and parking lots. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one came forward as kind of an interesting discussion, and we thought it might be good for the whole council to get involved at least with the discussion on this one. The limits of the downtown district are different depending upon what item you're speaking about. So let's just start with a discussion of what we talked about. And number one is the limits of what we consider the downtown district for zoning purposes. And you can see, and you've got copies of this in your packet, the limits of the downtown district are shown by the dotted line that we have shown around that area. It includes several zoning districts, and I included the types of zoning that are included in this downtown district. There is everything from limited business to central business to industrial in that area. And residential as well. So it's R4, B1, B2, B3, and I2 zoning that are included in the limits of what we classify as the downtown district. So that's the zoning district called the downtown district, and that's all the types of zoning that are within the limits of the downtown district. And the benefits, or if you want to call them benefits, to being in the downtown district, no matter what zoning district that you're in, have to do with off-street parking for non-residential uses only, and building line setbacks. So, if you're in R4 zoning, a multifamily type zoning within the downtown district, you still have to provide the required off-street parking, but can build right to the property line. Okay. In all of the other items, let's say the B1, B2, B3, and I2, you're exempted from the parking regulations and also can build to the property line. In the case of the multiple uses that you've been talking about and hearing about and getting recommendations or requests for, those are when you have the multiple uses of residential in the upper floors of commercial businesses, requiring then the off-street parking for the residential uses. So It's about as complicated as it gets for zoning and regulations in this area. But just so you know, the downtown district limits then allow you those two items. And if it's residential use, it's only the one item that is the variance or the exception. It's not a variance. Then, if that's the limits of the downtown district, what is it that's really the downtown? Does it follow what we consider the downtown district? Absolutely not. The downtown district is just that requirement for those two specific items that's, if you want to call it gerrymandering through the downtown area. If you look at what we had from the 1996-1997 comprehensive plan, there was an addition to that plan that showed some interesting features. And this is really what was included as the perception of what the downtown is. The downtown was kind of indicated as a 5-minute walk to the middle. That's what this circle is. This is what was considered a 5-minute walk to downtown, which that point was considered the intersection of 3rd Street and Main Street. So the Gambler, 5 minutes from the Gambler. You could, that was kind of considered as that downtown area. We can come back to any of these as you want. It'll make it even more confusing. This is what's considered the central business district, which many of us consider the downtown. Okay? And that is this area, a square bounded by North First Street to North 6th Street from Saratoga to Lyon. So that is the central business district for the city that's within the downtown area, that's within the downtown district. So let me put this one back up. What we discussed was what really is the downtown. And we talked about the idea of development of the downtown. Does it go all the way from Highway 59 North all the way out to Walmart? Is that the main street? Where does downtown and uptown split? And whether or not there should be specific indications that you're now entering the downtown or the uptown. Okay? So these are the items that we had for discussion. I think I've touched base on all of the items I wanted to from the memorandum. But in the end, it was more a discussion of what we consider to be the downtown business district. Where are you when you cross a certain line that now you're in the downtown? And we don't have a good recommendation of that for you and how that is developing. But there was some pretty considerable discussion of there should be an entrance to the downtown. And maybe that should be referred to a committee. Again, I hate coming back with a recommendation to recommend to another committee. But in this case, I think it's appropriate if you want to define that area. We've had a lot of changes going on in the last 10 years since this comprehensive plan was put together. I think it's very valid. If you look at the other stuff that I didn't put in this presentation, specifically the items that they saw as deficiencies in 1996-97 that have taken place in the last 10 years. The improvements to the backs of the businesses, the development of the place of the intersection of Main Street and College Drive, the the discussions of screening and development of those things for the downtown. But maybe those locations now aren't entirely accurate. We just had a presentation by MnDOT that one of their major projects is the redevelopment of College Drive from Bruce Street to the airport. During that renovation, we should have something already in place, like we have done with the downtown project for amenities and things like that. Where should that take place? Now, we've had a brief discussion of a roundabout at the intersection down by the Ampride station. Maybe that's the location where the highways coming together, you become aware that now that's your entrance to the downtown. Maybe the park, Legion Park, in the middle of or the north of downtown should be the point that you become aware that you're now entering the downtown area.
Liberty.
Yeah, Liberty Park, I'm sorry. And also then on the northwest side of town, is that 59 North? Is that the law enforcement center? Is that the 6th Street intersection that now in the Main Street project is the separation of the different lighting and amenities and bump outs and that sort of thing? So that's the kind of discussion that we had, is what is the downtown? Is it the downtown that we talk about is more of a place? It's not necessarily a zoning district or a business district or a residential subdivision, district. We have all those districts, including industrial, within the limits of the downtown, which has nothing to do with this picture. So I think maybe Charlie was kind of the one that headed this one up as far as the discussion goes. Maybe a comment or two by you, Charlie, to what direction that we might have on this sort of discussion.
I guess my discussion started off with wanting to extend the downtown district to include the new middle school. And just to, on the public property, come up Saratoga across where the school property was and go back down to the YMCA. And one of the purposes I had for that is that then on the corner of Southview and Saratoga, you could put a welcome to downtown, all right, or welcome to uptown, or welcome to whatever. In seeing that sign, it tells you that, okay, now I'm in a different place. I'm going to be driving slower. I'm going to be more aware of people walking, and as you come past the school, that slow down to have people walking. The library built down in that area, the YMCA down in that area, it would slow some of the traffic down coming down that way. And we talked before at another meeting where we were looking at places where we could put downtown signs where, and the same thing, you go out past County Market there and put a downtown sign there, and because that's coming at the edge of that downtown area there, and you got the school there, and you got things, reasons you want traffic to slow down, first of all, but just in the complexity of everything that takes place when you have to change a downtown district and the setbacks. I mean, the land that I was looking at including because it's all public land. It's the fire department, it's Tiger Lake, it'd be the library, it'd be the middle school. Land that I don't see changing hands in the next 40 years. That's the reason I brought it forward, is that. But that whole discussion of, are we, do we separate out a downtown district to a downtown area to a downtown, and get that whole thing done so that you don't wind up with somebody saying, okay, I'm only a block from the coke plant, and the coke plant really doesn't fit our needs, so let's tear that coke plant down and build all the way out to the sidewalk, because we'll be in the downtown district, so we don't have to have the setbacks or whatever, then it changes the perspectives of what you can do. So I would suggest that we would put it to some kind of committee that could get a good plan put together for that whole downtown area in a way that we could sign it, in the way that we could approach it, especially as we fix the new downtown up. Just exactly where would you, on the main streets, consider the downtown to start? And give that discussion going first. And then from there, we could decide where we want this district to end.
maybe we could just put signs up where we think the sign should be. It sounds like people would still read it, and we might slow the traffic down without all this process.
Well, I think if you ask Public Safety and Public Works to respond, the simple installation of a sign is not going to necessarily change the behavior of drivers in those respective areas just because we say it's in the downtown.
I think it's interesting, Glenn, interesting perspective when you tie this back to the comprehensive plan and the discussion and the efforts that went forward there, and especially in light of planning that has gone into the 07 project, but the perhaps just as important issue in the College Drive project, that we're probably at the cusp of needing to once again do a revisit to that portion of the comprehensive plan to see that it meets the community needs, and that likely is going to involve citizen input, as you're suggesting, Charlie. It may also need some involvement from DSU, who was our consultant in doing this comprehensive plan, to be sure that we're still true to the planning perspectives, that we're not just putting a sign up for putting a sign up, that it really fits in with what the long-term interests of the community are. So the question would be, how do we continue this discussion? What's the next step?
And with the question, how does that fit within the ranking of the priorities that you've got planned for the projects that engineering and the city has with what's coming this summer?
Well, you can see that our recommendation pushed the responsibility to a different department. I think it just needs to be. It's really a discussion of place rather than an engineering technical discussion. We can build what you want to do, but the discussion needs to be a planning community effort, I believe.
And what you're looking for outcomes or wanting to accomplish by doing that.
I agree. I think you can put it to a committee that's, not going to take up a lot of staff time. Can we have committee hearings or committee talks and do some things that wouldn't take a lot of staff time? I mean, if we want to start setting some of those places, to me, in my mind, when we're fixing up the downtown and we get that done after next year, that following year, it would be the places that we'd want to start putting that as we go out and build out on Highway 19. That's the time when we'd want to know how far do we want amenities to go. If we're going to have some downtown amenities going out, is it going to stop at the park, or is it going to go all the way out to Highway 19?
I'd like you to do, if I could, look at 17, 8, 20, and 21. I would like to see something just like that for College Drive, if that can be done through a planning study process or hiring DSU or whoever it takes. But you can see that was a tool that we followed in the last 10 years and are continuing to follow. The first one, -20, was the lack of certain things, and 21 was a recommendation. And I think, boy, that's something that we've been able to follow.
Going back in that process, that was also the catalyst that, as you take a look at the improvements that the Schwann Food Company has undertaken in and around their corporate office, part of that was the layout and the planning that was done as part of the comprehensive plan to give them that focus and vision. And as we took a look at locating the YMCA project in proximity to the downtown, the work that's been done behind the businesses, the former corner bar, Varsity Pub Block, as far as some of the acquisition to eliminate some of the blight and the other conditions, have all come from that comprehensive planning process.
I think the other issue that could be incorporated into this discussion is the planning for pedestrians and trails, coming into the downtown area. So I think the suggestion of, Glenn, you're suggesting the Green Space Committee, is that? Or
someone under community services, I'm thinking more is appropriate than engineering.
Is that an appropriate starting place? Are we comfortable with that?
That would be great with me. I think it would be a good deal.
Okay, very good. And then the second part of that discussion would be consider the introduction of the ordinance amending the private use of public streets and parking lots. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you take a look at the proposed changes to private use of public streets and parking lots, I just put it together the way I believe that it has been working best, and would like to introduce this ordinance. And any comments that you might have,
Any comments at this time? Is there a motion to introduce?
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Charlie. Discussion? Not all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 18, consider the proposed revisions to the special assessment policy. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And this one is as a result of the three major reconstruction assessment projects that we've had. The major change in the proposal is that 100% of the mains, whether it be water, sewer, or storm, be handled by the utility fund, with service lines still 100% paid by the property owner because they are the owner of the service lines. The other items are just minor changes of wording.
Take you to the back side, and this is the recommendation from the Ways and Means Committee, is on the back side of page 18-17. The recommendation that's coming to you is coming from City Engineer, Director of Public Works, City Attorney, myself, and our Utility General Manager back to the respective governing bodies, that as you take a look at the process that we've come through, and you need to step back a few years from when Glenn first came. Number one is we attempted to develop an up-to-date special assessment policy that was done after a significant amount of research across the state and put together through the Public Improvement Transportation Committee that was ultimately recommended to the council. We then came forward with the three projects that you see before you, that being the North 6th Street project, the Hill Marshall Street, and the East Area Interceptor Sewer project. And in taking a look at that, I think it was developed trying to provide a funding relationship between what should be picked up across the entire community through the various respective utility funds versus that which should be paid by the adjacent benefiting property owner. And in that process, I think, Glenn, you would recall that basically on those portions, not inclusive of oversizing of the means, that funding relationship was about 75% city to 25% property owner for the utilities. Street work is
50-50.
50-50. We took that project, obviously the work that was done on those three projects that I mentioned, that resulted in essentially complete redevelopment in those residential neighborhoods, with the latter one, the East Area Sanitary Sewer, Interceptor Sewer, out along the business community on the north side of East College Drive, from Mustang Trail essentially out to O'Connell Street. What you have in front of you is an update that was prepared as of the 1st of March. It's not complete in total at this point. We believe we've got additional legal fees that are becoming through the process. But as you take a look at when we assess that project, and I think Glenn has a recap on page 18-20, as far as what was the original project cost, what was the original amount of the assessment versus that percentage that was actually paid for by the owners, and as we've come through the process and made the revisions or the adjustments based on going through the appraisal process and the litigation where we took three different residential properties to the district court with the decision ultimately by the district court judge, that to date we've incurred a little over $92,000 on the legal appraisal court and trust account with the opposing counsel on 49 appeals. I think we still have one remaining on the North 6th Street project. But if you take a look at that cost, and I believe with what we've got coming in additional legal, we'll probably have in excess of about $2,000 per property that appeal the special assessments for those element costs. And when you take a look at specifically in the two residential projects where the appraisal that we did was set by the appraiser, about $5,000, it went forward through the court process. The judge, I believe, ultimately settled on $4,750 or 20?
$4,720.
$4,720 per parcel for water, sanitary, storm, street, curb, and gutter, even though a number of those assessments were probably in that $8,000 to $9,000 range. So with that reduction to $4,720, and then you take a look at that, we've got between $1,900 and we'll probably go over $2,000 per parcel for legal and appraisal. It certainly hasn't been extremely cost-effective to trying to do that. But we knew before we could recommend some, 3.5, 4 years ago in this process, where there's the argument and the justification that the benefiting adjoining property owner should be paying some percentage or some dollar amount, that as we took that special assessment process through the process, we've discovered that the Minnesota law that requires us to justify the special assessment cost versus the increase in market value, that we are unable to do that, at least to the levels that are commensurate with the assessments that you first levied a number of years ago. So as we've taken a look at this and talked between Glenn and Brad and myself with concurrence and assistance from the city attorney, and we've looked at other court cases and that, and we look at trying to move forward, we're not certain that when you take a look at what's invested in the legal and the appraisal process, that there's dollar value received for those costs that are incurred to address those aspects of that. And so in that vein, it seems that from a cost standpoint, as well as a public relations standpoint, that it probably would be prudent to make revisions to the special assessment policy, as Glenn is recommending, with the idea that in those projects that we have on the drawing board right now and or moving forward, that tonight is a recommendation to revise the policy. We'd ask that you hold a public hearing at the next meeting and consider the adoption with that, recognizing that the corresponding result will require potentially future increases in the utility rates for water that's handled by the Marshall Municipal Utilities, or in the sanitary sewer and storm water utility rates that are under your jurisdiction, in order to pick up these increased costs by changing the special assessment policy, that it will necessitate increase in those monthly rates to enable us to pick up these capital improvement costs as they are incurred into the future. We try to do 5-year forecasting as to what those capital needs are, provide a recommendation on rate structure, but as we saw this year and what we brought you this last fall in the budgetary process, is they brought the sanitary sewer project in the tree subdivision totaling $2 million. Well, that wasn't in our 5-year CIP, and that was anticipated based on the utilities encountering a number of the water main breaks. So in attempting to wrap up, based on the fact that we're incurring those kind of costs, as we presented this to Ways and Means, they are recommending to the council to consider a modification to the special assessment policy.
So is there a motion to call for a public hearing and consider the adoption of the special assessment policy at the March 19th meeting?
So
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Mike. Discussion.
Larry has here.
Discussion on the motion.
My general consensus is I thought when we went through all this work in '06, that we established the groundwork of how we're going to do special assessments, et cetera. And I thought that we came up with a consensus that was accepted by the public to be 20% of that cost. And I thought we pretty much got that kind of established. And I've talked to some people on the Tree Street, and they said, yeah, it needs to be done. It's probably time that we just come forward and get it done. And then the backside of that is now if we go ahead with this other proposal, what do we do with all those people that have already been assessed and paid for that?
We can't go back and make this retroactive, that without coming through the experience that we have and taking a look at it, what has to occur is that in order to be able to, outside of the utility revenue funds, in order to undertake those improvement pieces that are not utility related that we picked up under general citywide taxation through the issuance of the general obligation bond, at least 20% of the cost of that project attributable to the use of that financing has to be specially assessed, or we cannot use that financing tool. So if, for example, let's take a look at the downtown Main Street project, that if you picked up the water, the sanitary sewer, and storm sewer pieces that under this revised policy, then you're basically taking a look at that amenity piece and a portion of those costs that are not to be picked up by state aid or other sources, that at least 20% of that would have to be assessed in order to utilize that financing piece. We knew, and we talked with Ways and Means about that very issue, that coming forward with a change, that it would be different than those that have come through the debate and the discussion. And in taking a look at that, even assessing at close to, let me take you back to that page and have Glenn and Dennis chime in, but if you go to the back of, on page 18-2, or 1820, that with those revisions that have come through the special assessment process, you can see the original amount that was assessed versus where we have finally ended up at, and that we've spent, in addition to what we couldn't hold on to through the assessment process, is we've spent in excess of $2,000, or will by the time the final accounting comes in, on appraisal and legal to fight through that process, of which there is no benefit derived for that. But it was necessary in order to attempt to see how this whole thing played out under the statutory requirement that the benefit received is equal to or greater than the increase in the market value. And as we saw through this process, we couldn't prove that up to the levels that we thought were sufficient when we first brought this forward. But we didn't know that and had never gone through a complete neighborhood redevelopment project until we brought these to the table.
That's another reason why we're not recommending a reduction of the street reconstruction costs. That was one of the things that was obvious in the court procedures, is that generally the things you can't see did not impact the market value increase. But the street improvements, the curb and gutter, street itself, sidewalk improvements, things that you could see, the curb appeal things, would affect the market value. So we didn't change that part, but they did say that if you can turn on the water, if you can flush the toilet, the water goes away in the storm, there's really no change to the market value. And so that's kind of the direction that we've headed from that discussion.
Any other discussion on the motion?
We certainly recommend, or recognize, as we brought this to Ways and Means, as we bring it to the council, is that there are those that have gone through that process and had to pay, that under the recommendations and the revisions we have, that would not be the case. And I would ask any of those members of the Ways and Means Committee that if they care to comment, that they either provide that input or you provide that at the hearing process. But as we've analyzed this and trying to look forward, is that there was no material gain for spending that $2,000 per parcel when we couldn't even apply that to the cost of the improvements.
Other discussion on the motion? Now I'll call for a vote on the motion. All of those in favor of the motion is to call for a public hearing at the next regular council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 19A is a legal correction, I'll call it, to the just the item that was on our table that was added to the agenda to the pertaining to the sales agreement of the city-owned property to Schwan Food Company.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. The recent weather did kind of cause a delay in some of the preparation of the document was done last week, but unbeknownst to me, we didn't hit the send button to get it over here on time. So what we're looking at in the ordinance that you passed on February 5th, it talked about a simultaneous action to approve a property exchange agreement, when in fact it should have said a purchase agreement. So we're going to have an amended ordinance to correct, just one minor technical issue. So I guess we just call for the introduction, and we do need, do need to kind of shape up the ordinance a little bit to show what's being deleted and what's being added. So, but ultimately, we're changing a couple of words in the ordinance.
So it's necessary to introduce this
Correct.
corrected ordinance?
Yep, introduce it tonight, act on it at the next meeting.
Is there that motion to that effect?
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes. Anything else on that, Dennis?
No.
Okay, agenda item number 20, council member commission board liaison reports. The EDA does meet tomorrow. They also will be participating in the home show this weekend, Friday through Sunday, with a booth explaining the housing opportunities at the Parkway Development. Regional Development Commission meets this Thursday evening. Larry?
None of mine have met since our last meeting.
Okay, Jenny?
The Human Rights Commission met, and you saw the posters tonight, and that was all decided, and they're getting ready for their essay contest next month. And I was unable to attend the Convention and Visitor Bureau meeting.
Okay, Mike?
Hospital Board, I was not able to attend their last meeting. We had council and a meeting before then as well. Utilities Commission met. Basically, they discussed some things relating to the Tree Street projects and the fact that they're pretty confident that they'll have no problems with the necessary easement attainment they'll have in order to do all the underlaying of the wiring and systems and everything. So they covered that. Council Personnel Committee, the only thing, you each got a package tonight on the city administrator's appraisal. You need to look that over. We need to schedule a meeting. We'll have to shoot, we can't do it this week, obviously, because it was a 72-hour, and we don't have availability of some people if we allow for the 72-hour notice. So we'll have to shoot for the week of the 26th. And at this point, Mike, I'll have to ask you to have Eileen maybe send out an email to the council asking what dates that week they're available. And whenever we've got the whole group available, that's when we need to meet sometime that week. And I guess I really won't set a time frame or anything, but the week of the 26th. And just so you know, I'm not going to be here for the council meeting on the 19th. In fact, I'm gone starting the 12th through the 23rd. So.
Dan?
None of mine have met. I've got EDA tomorrow and Housing Commission next week. So.
And Charlie?
None of mine have met.
Okay, let's move on to council member individual items. Jenny?
No.
Larry?
I have none.
Charlie? Yeah? No. The only thing I would add is, just a comment on the performance of the street department in particular, as well as the other folks that have helped during our two most recent and extended storms. I thought they did a very commendable job, and I'd like to pass those. It was a difficult storm because of the duration, the volume, the weight, and they did a very, very nice job. So, Glenn, if you could, and Mike, if you'd pass that along to the crews. Okay, agenda item number 22, review of pending agenda items. Any comments on the pending agenda items? If not, is there anything further to come forward from the council? Glenn, do you have anything more? Tom? Dennis?
No.
Mike? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Motion by Mike, seconded by Dan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we're adjourned.
You're within 8 seconds. I mean, it's 8 seconds.
I am Jim. There's a difference here.